Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going on a seriously fascinating trip into the human mind. We're talking about the tricky, sometimes uncomfortable concept of self-deception and, more importantly, we're mapping out a practical, step-by-step journey to finally overcome our own cognitive blind spots. If you've ever felt totally stuck, or maybe wondered why some people, or, maybe even yourself, keep repeating the exact same mistakes while genuinely believing they're doing everything right, well, you are in the exact right place. We're going to break the whole shebang down using some really incredible insights from Thomas Alathia's work, 12 Steps to a Good Life.
So I want to kick things off by asking you a very direct question. How honest are you with yourself? Really think about it for a second. The author of our source text, Thomas Alathia, well, he thought he was incredibly self-aware. He was in counseling, he was deeply committed to getting better, and he even took this psychological test specifically designed to measure his degree of self-deception. When the results came back, his counselor sat down and gave him his score.
He scored an 85%. Now, at first, he actually thought, hey, great, that's a solid B. But then his counselor gently pointed out that this actually meant he was lying to himself 85% of the time. Ouch. I mean, just think about the sheer magnitude of that. It completely shatters that old idea we have that we are totally, transparently aware of our own minds. The real truth is that our minds constantly filter and distort reality to protect us, which leaves this massive gap where self-deception absolutely thrives.
To navigate our way out of this, here's our roadmap. 1. The trap of self-deception. 2. The Dunning-Kruger effect. 3. Errors in our thinking. 4. Escaping the illusion. And 5. Cultivating true humility.
Okay, let's dive right into Section 1, the trap of self-deception.
Before we can even try to solve the problem, we really have to understand it. And this trap? It's built by our own ego and our own worldview. We all have this desperate, hardwired psychological need to feel, well, good and smart. Because of that, our unconscious beliefs act as a literal filter for reality before our conscious brains even have a chance to process it. Cognitive distortions just warp the facts so they fit neatly into what we already want to believe. Our ego fiercely protects our comfort zone. As the author points out, we end up suffocating in these tiny, rigid boxes of our own making. And why do we do it? Because we want to avoid the painful mismatch between our perceptions and actual reality. We would rather suffer the illusion of comfort than face the sting of being wrong.
Which brings us to Section 2, the Dunning-Kruger effect.
So this self-deception, it manifests as this compounding illusion of competence that actively prevents us from learning. The book outlines this absolutely fascinating, famous psychological bias, the Dunning-Kruger effect. Basically, this is where incompetent people vastly overestimate their own skills and knowledge. Meanwhile, highly competent people actually underestimate their abilities, because they figure, hey, if a task is easy for me, it must be easy for everybody else, right? But here is the tragic irony of the Dunning-Kruger effect. People who lack expertise also lack the very awareness required to recognize their own mistakes. They simply don't have the mental tools to see their own shortcomings, which leads to this unearned overconfidence and a stubborn refusal to learn.
And this brilliantly illustrates the sheer tragedy of the Dunning-Kruger effect. There's this ancient Arabian maxim cited in the source that hits the nail right on the head. He that knows not and knows not that he knows not is a fool. When you literally do not know what you don't know, you're operating with completely unearned overconfidence. You become closed off to growth, utterly convinced that you already possess all the answers.
But how does this actually play out in everyday life? The author shares a few highly relatable anecdotes. You've probably heard someone say something like, I've had a few accidents, sure, but I'm an excellent driver. Or maybe, I'm a fantastic chef, but people just have weird tastes. Or even, I'm an amazing singer because everyone loves me at karaoke, completely ignoring the fact that everyone is just being polite and trying to survive the song. Listen, these aren't just harmless little white lies. They're heavy, defensive shields. Unearned overconfidence actively ignores objective feedback. It twists failure into external excuses, completely preserving the ego at the total cost of reality.
Let's move on to Section 3, errors in our thinking.
So what are the actual mechanics behind this? Why do we fiercely refuse to learn even when reality comes crashing down around us? Well, the author shares this incredibly vulnerable, real-life example that we can call the calculus trap. He actually failed college calculus, not once, not twice, but 5 times. 5! Why? Because he was suffering from what a counselor diagnosed as an approach avoidance conflict. Basically, he was driven entirely by pride. He had this desperate need to appear smart, which completely clashed with his intense fear of failure and his absolute lack of basic study skills. His ego simply wouldn't let him drop the class or ask for tutoring, because doing that would mean admitting he wasn't as naturally brilliant as you wanted to believe. He was completely trapped by his own lack of insight.
Now notice the sharp contrast between these two fundamental ways of viewing the world. The judging perspective is exactly what keeps us trapped in the Dunning-Kruger effect. It constantly asks things like, whose fault is this? Or what is wrong with me? It's entirely focused on protecting the fragile ego and assigning blame. On the flip side, we have the learning perspective. This one asks, okay, what actually works? And what can I learn from this? It seeks objective truth rather than emotional comfort. Shifting your brain from judging the learning is literally the first major key to breaking out of those self-made boxes we talked about earlier.
All right, Section 4, Escaping the Illusion.
The author presents a really foundational philosophy for getting out of this trap. New knowledge can only come from outside our current flawed worldview. You just can't solve a problem using the exact same mind that created it in the first place. So to actively dismantle the Dunning-Kruger effect and step outside of our comfort zones, we have to take some very specific actions. First, actively seek feedback from truly knowledgeable people and, actually listen to them. Second, compare your skills to objective standards and real-world benchmarks, not just your own internal feelings. Third, you absolutely must be willing to admit what you don't know. Literally say it out loud. And finally, remain teachable. You do not have to know everything. Taking these steps forces your ego to take a back seat to objective reality.
Let's move to and see how this builds into Section 5, Cultivating True Humility.
If self-deception and unearned overconfidence are the disease, then humility is the ultimate antidote. Now, humility gets a bad rap sometimes, right? People often associate it with weakness or just being meek. But as defined here, humility is actually a mindset of incredible, razor-sharp clarity. It's the quality of being open to learning, of acknowledging your flaws without totally crumbling, and seeing reality accurately without those thick, heavy ego defenses. When you practice true humility, you actually free up massive amounts of mental and emotional energy that you used to waste just defending your fragile ego.
The really crucial point is how we actually put this into practice. The author frames this as a hero's journey, using 3 specific steps to systematically combat the Dunning-Kruger effect. Step 1. Admit life is unmanageable. You have to surrender the illusion of absolute control. Step 4. Take a searching and fearless personal inventory. You finally look at the cold, hard, objective data about your own behavior. And then, Step 5. Admit what you found, both to yourself and to another human being. This completely shatters the isolation of self-deception. It is a profound act of humility that bridges the gap between who you pretend to be and who you actually are.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a final, really provocative thought. Overcoming your own blind spots? It is not easy. It requires you to step out of your nice, safe, protective box and stare reality right in the face. So the question is, will you choose the pain of discipline to face reality and embark on your own hero's journey toward true knowledge? Or will you choose to just suffer the illusion of comfort? The choice, as always, is entirely up to you. Keep learning, stay humble, and I'll catch you on the next explainer.